Here we go.
I just lost.
She's going to read a script.
Well, no, I just wanted to thank everybody for coming on the poll, and I just wanted to give you our topic tonight.
Sheila, what are you doing?
I was looking for what our topic was going, which I had written down.
Sheila's looking for her script. Oh, Sean, I'm all right. You're so kind. Sure, put it on. Why not? And then if it gets too hot, we'll turn it off. Thank you, Sean. Sheila, just say something. Let's just get going.
Okay, well, I want to thank you all for coming. We're starting our series for the new year, and it's dealing with attachment and aversion, how to manage attachment and aversion.
That's what it is it?
That's our topic tonight.
Okay, good. Okay,
There you go.
that'll do. Thank you. Okay, people. Attachment and aversion sounds like Buddhism. Okay. That's the topic for tonight. Okay. Okay, so we think we're here together to listen and think about and analyze and contemplate and maybe internalize if we choose to apply, because it's meant to be advice. Every word of it is advice. We don't have to take it, but it's given as advice. And it's about really basically Buddha's got this advice about how to become more happy and less suffering, and therefore more useful to others and less harmful. Simple way to put it. So let's look at all that. And we can sing our little prayer. The first two lines is just kind of reiterating our reliance on the Buddha and the Dharma and the Sangha for those of us who kind of figure we're Buddhists already. And the second two lines are expressing this kind of motivation, the Tibetans would say, we're stating our purpose, which I just stated before, to hear, to listen to these teachings so we can develop our qualities so we can help others be useful in the world. Sing the prayer in Tibetan. Sangye chodang soke chognam la jangchu baru dagni kyab suchi dagi chonyen gipe sonam ki drola penchir sangye drupa shok sangye chodang soke chognam la jangchu baru dagni kyab suchi dagi chonyen gipe sonam ki drola penchir sangye drupa shok Sangye charang soke chognam la jangcho baru dagni kyab suchi dagi chonyen gipe sonam ki drola penchir sangye drupa shok. So in one way, the Buddhist view of the mind is the kind of the way of just presenting the contents of our thoughts and feelings and emotions is almost deceptively simple, you know, but it's very helpful. Basically, if you listen to, you know, you've got, okay, first of all, you've got your sensory consciousness. And then you've got your mental consciousness. And there's a detailed discussions about this in Buddhist psychology, and it's actually incredibly helpful. We can learn to distinguish. I mean, let's just look at this one. Learn to distinguish between these two. This is actually huge, you know, in our pursuit of happiness and our pursuit of being free from suffering. We can see we have the senses. It's very clear. And then we can see we have thoughts and feelings and emotions. It's very clear. And they function radically differently. I don't think we think of it that way. Because, of course, in the materialist view, we are only physical anyway. We have a brain, and then we have, you know, the sensory experiences. So it's all very physical based. But of course, the radical difference in Buddhism, Buddha would suggest that the consciousness, including a sensory consciousness, you've got sensory consciousness and mental consciousness, and mind and consciousness are virtually the same. And for Buddha, that's not physical. So this is a massive point, actually, and can be proven eventually internally from your own experience, but won't even go into that. But this is a radical point. This is huge. But let's look at the difference between sensory and mental, and in the way this understanding this and distinguishing between them can play a huge role in our lives in navigating our experiences, you know. So I often use a simple example of, let's say, you know, there's a thing we call a cup, right? Just called a cup. But technically speaking, so the first thing, our entry into everything is sensory, isn't it? It's very clear. The second you wake up in the morning, your senses come back to life, and then there are the various objects that you experience, things that you see, things you hear, things your tactile consciousness experiences, things you taste, things you smell. So basically there's oneself and then the outside world. So from the sensory point of view, let's look at the difference between the sensory and the mental, and this is really huge, very helpful. The sensory consciousness from the Buddhist perspective is incredibly limited in its capacity for cognition. The job of your mind is to cognize, to know, to be aware. These verbs are synonymous. That's the job of your mind. To know, to cognize, to be aware. So how do your senses cognize? Well, first you've got sensory consciousness. Remember the Buddha's view, that itself is not physical, but it's the part of your mind that functions obviously through the medium of the body. It's very clear. Not discussing the brain here. So eyeballs, for example, you've got eyeballs, all the nerves are working nicely, the light is on, your eyelids are open, and then a thing appears in front of you, your eyes, and you'll go, oh, there's a pretty cup. You'll say that, you know, or you might say it's ugly, whatever, but you'll describe. You hear a sound, oh, there's, you know, oh, wow, that lovely Mozart. We will describe it. So naturally we assume that my eye consciousness is cognizing a pretty cup, that my ear consciousness is cognizing a wonderful sound. Technically, no, not possible. Eye consciousness and all the five sensory consciousnesses are profoundly limited in their capacity for cognition. So eye consciousness can only cognize two things: shape and color. Shape and color. Ear consciousness can only cognize sound. Each of the five senses is the same. So shape and color. Doesn't know, it can't even say red, but just all it does is it's like very limited, shape and color. So if it's only capable of cognizing that, then it's an obvious question is, well, which part of my mind is cognizing, identifying, labeling, calling it, that shape and color, a pretty cup? That's conceptual, and that's your mental consciousness. That's where the workshop is, as Lama Zopa says. And that's Buddha's expertise, how to unpack and unravel and become super familiar with our mental consciousness and sort it out, you know. And this is the job of being a Buddhist, learning to distinguish. And this is where I said before, deceptively simple model of the mind. Forget the sensory, but if we look into the mental for a minute, I'll go back to the sensory in a second. But if we look into the mental, you've got precisely three categories of states of mind. All the stuff in your head, from the second you wake up in the morning, after you've gone past the sensory, then you can hear your head. Chaos, isn't it? Non-stop. And it's the most natural thing in the world. Everybody's like this. Uncontrolled thoughts. I hear even in the materialist model, they talk about 1,000 thoughts a second. I think Buddha would totally agree. But it's chaos, isn't it? And we assume that's normal. Well, it is normal. The Buddha happens to have found, all these Indians before the Buddha, these genius Indians discovered a technique, a brilliant skill that enables us to completely harness the energy of this mental consciousness. And then the work starts. We're going to use that incredible, skillful focus to then identify and distinguish between all the nonsense in here and start to mold our mind, as Lama Zopa says, into the shape, very simply, of a happy, non-harming, content, fulfilled, useful human being. It's a job done by the mind on the mind. But let's look at back to the senses for a second. It's very telling. So what happens is this: eyes see shape and color, but then because we are so familiar, I mean, since we're now adults and we've learned to identify millions of things, we see and taste and touch and smell millions of things a day, and because we've retained our memory, as quicker than Google, you could argue, your eyes go here, and then quicker than Google, your mental consciousness is accessed, where all your thoughts and feelings and emotions. And because you're familiar, up comes cup, and then because your taste, what you like, a pretty cup. If you're losing your memory, very good point. You won't know how to call it that. Or if you've forgotten, you have to look up, kind of go on, you have to ask YouTube, or you have to ask Google, what's this? Oh, there's a cup. No, we've memorized it. But because it's all so quick, we can be forgiven for thinking that it's our eye consciousness cognizing a pretty cup. Can you see my point? It's so quick. It's so quick. And now if you think about it, from the rest of our day, the senses meet objects, shapes, colors, sounds, the senses experience, contact their objects, and then mental consciousness takes over and is basically writing interpretations. So we live in interpretations. This is why we have wars and fight and go crazy, because we buy into the opinion in our mental consciousness. Basically, okay, the other point about the mental consciousness is you've got sensory and you have mental. And then within the mental, you've got a grosser level, the very gross level, and we live at the grossest level. And that's called conceptuality, thoughts. And that includes, surprisingly, our feelings, our emotions. They are rooted in being conceptual thoughts. When we can begin to understand this, we can really begin to understand the job that Buddha's telling us we can do, And then we have these subtle levels of mind that we do not even posit as existing in modern science, neuroscience, and psychology, because they're levels of consciousness. These Indians discovered them more than 3,000 years ago. And the Buddha, this is their expertise. Using this samadhi skill, this concentration skill, we are able to completely subdue the grosser levels of the sensory and the grosser levels of the mental, which is all the berserk thoughts. You don't just disappear into nothingness. You don't disappear into space, but you learn to completely harness this energy, and you're able to, and this takes time. You've got to give up sex, drugs, and rock and roll and go to the mountains for several years and work intensely hard at doing this job, but it's all there doable. The technique is there, extant for more than 3,000 years. And gradually you learn by harnessing and subduing totally the gross levels of the sensory and then the gross level of the mental, the conceptuality, to access a subtler level of your mind. And that just sounds mysterious to us because we don't posit such a thing as existing. If you saw a person who completely accomplished this single point of concentration, this samadhi, they look like they were dead, because the grosser level of the physical is not even functioning. This level is beyond the brain, beyond the physical altogether, which of course why Buddha's point is the mind is not physical. That's what they've discovered from their own direct observation, not something they made up. Consciousness is not physical. Completely different view. So even to see the difference between the sensory and the mental, this way that I just described, is huge. Because, that's how we spend our lives. Because, there's hubby slurping his coffee in the kitchen. It's a sound. Basically, it's a sound, right? A sound. But you name it ugly. You get upset. You name that pretty. We spend our lives having interpretations about the things we experience through the five senses. And this is the tragedy. The tragedy is, the one that keeps us locked in samsara, is we don't even realize we have an opinion. We think it's the objective truth. That's the killer. That's the killer. I don't ever say, well, that appears to my eyes as rather pleasing. I think that could be called a pretty cup. What do you think, Mary? Excuse me, I am right. And if you think it's not, you're in trouble. You're an idiot. Look at us. That's what we do in the world. That's why we have problems. Because we don't realize, this is so shocking, but it's very humbling if we can hear it, that from the second we wake up, We are living in the interpretations in our head. Basically, thoughts are concepts, opinions, viewpoints. And this is where we look into the model of the mind now. Within those, in all those thousands of thoughts that are there, you can divide them all into 3 categories. Those that are neurotic, delusional, ridiculous, misconceptions, the source of suffering and the source of why we harm others, attachment, anger, and the rest. All conceptual thoughts. But they are so habitual that they now even inform our body. We feel it in our body, as we say. We mean emotions, you know. And then you have the virtuous states of mind, positive ones, useful ones, valid opinions. Valid not in a moralistic sense, you know. So you could argue that a concept, it is a concept, a cup, that's a concept, a cup. And you could say that's a valid concept because we could, and why? Not because it came out of heaven like that, not because God told us, it's because we've all agreed, this is conventional reality, we've all agreed that this flat and bottom clay container, you know, in this case with a handle, is called a cup. We know what it is, it holds your tea. So that's a valid concept because we agree. It's by convention that we agree. Not in its bones. This is the key point about Buddha. Not in its bones a cup. We have agreed it's a cup. We've agreed conventionally. That's called a cup. This is called a computer. That's called a cloth. So we can get along well if we all agree, don't we, on our conceptual thoughts. But when it comes to ugly and beautiful and bad and good and you and he and this and those, the attachment opinions and angry opinions and jealous opinions and depressed opinions and anxious opinions and arrogant opinions, they're the ones that are the troublemakers. They're the ones that are they distort, you know. So that's my boyfriend's cup. I mean, now he's left me. I'm going to say that's an ugly cup, guaranteed. And I will believe it's the objective truth. In that clay, there is ugliness. This is what Buddha is telling us. That approach is what keeps us stuck in samsara. That's what he's saying. And there are these levels and levels of these misconceptions. These are the troublemakers. These are the source of our pain. Because it's so habitual, we don't know, we don't even think that they're opinions. This is the shocking part. We believe they're the truth. That's the most shocking thing. Because the habit is so strong, you know. That slurping of the coffee, it's a simple example. It's a simple example. The second your ear consciousness contacts that object, that sound, and due to your habits, it triggers due to your personality and your habits, your attachment, which is only wanting nice sounds. And what does nice mean? Sounds that you call nice, and suddenly, you know, you bump into it. That's that sound of slurping coffee from your husband's mouth smashes into your attachment. Attachment has a panic attack and turns into aversion and then calls it ugly. We all understand this. This is how we live our lives. It's not religion. This is incredible psychology. It's an opinion. We don't think it is. We think it's objective truth. Set in stone. It's called anger, polite anger, quiet anger, maybe. It depends on the kind of person you are. But aversion is the bare bones state of mind, beneath anger, aversion. You push it away, you know. Attachment, you go towards the thing, and aversion, you go away from it. And then all the other delusions are rooted in these, in this categories of states of mind. The first lot they're called delusions, afflictions, as we know they're called, mental afflictions, they call them in the Sanskrit and the Tibetan. Is the emotional states of mind. And why they're emotional is because they're habits. For so many lifetimes, Buddha says, you know, we've got this attachment, this junkie in us, so deep in our bones, this conceptual state of mind, basically, that exaggerates the deliciousness of certain things. It's constantly there, like this emotional hunger, just underneath. It's not overt, it's not explicit at all, it's just there, driving us. And it's every second it is wanting it only wants to contact things that trigger pleasant feelings in me. They're called nice, you know, that I call nice. And as long as you agree with me, we'll get along. We know that. And then as soon as my attachment meets an object of the senses, that's the first doorway, or has, doesn't need the senses to have unhappy thoughts, because we can be living in all our thoughts in ourselves, just having our crazy thoughts. Anger can come from the memory of something, We can see contacting the external things in the world. You read Facebook, and you read the newspapers, you read iPad, you hear the news, you watch the television. So all this stuff we're bombarded by. So we're having all these opinions about it. They're called political, for example. But it's opinions. So the thing is, what Buddha's saying is we've got to sort out what reality is. If we're in touch with reality, we will be happy human beings. Of course, his view of reality goes to very subtle levels, way more subtle than we would think about in daily life, But even relative reality, it's helpful to get in touch with relative reality and then learn to harness all the crazy, deluded emotional responses to those things, And this is what's tricky. What's reality? Even at the conventional level. Depending on, we can see that, depending on the person, that's ugly to one person and pretty to another. So it's very hard to find some kind of truth in that. I mean, with people, it's the same. Mr. Trump. Some people adore Mr. Trump. We know that's a fact. We know it's a fact. They adore Mr. Trump. They think he's the most brilliant politician, totally committed to his views. That's a fact. We know that. So whenever we read what he's doing and that other person sees it, hears it, even here, because they agree with his views. So for them, it appears good. He appears good. So how to find reality in this? It's very difficult. It's very hard, isn't it? No wonder we have trouble. Because it depends so much on your view. I mean, okay, what's the base then? From the Buddhist perspective, what is the basis? It's a very interesting point. What's the basis for even understanding conventional truth? Well, the basis is virtue. This is a central point in the Buddhist psychological analysis, that all the neurotic states of mind have a characteristic of being non-virtuous and causing us, non-virtuous meaning to be harmful to others and therefore to ourselves. And the virtuous states of mind, the positive ones, the useful ones, they are states of mind that we could call kindness, intelligence, generosity, forgiveness, compassion. They're rooted in this, in the character of being virtue or non-virtue. In fact, synonyms in Buddhist psychology for a negative state of mind is a non-virtuous state of mind. A synonym for a positive state of mind is a virtuous state of mind. There can be factual states of mind, like that is a cup. That is a person. That is an action. So then if we wanted to try and sort out what reality is, or even what, how you try and find out a basis for deciding what is moral, what is ethical. From the Buddhist point, it's very clear. An ethical action, a virtuous action, a thing you do with your body and speech. A virtuous action, we're talking about in relationship to other beings, would be one that benefits them, or would be one that at least doesn't harm them. So a thought, I must not take that dollar on the street. That's a virtue, because it might belong to someone else. That's a virtuous thought. A wish not to harm somebody. And then even more, you have to take $1 out of your own pocket and you give it to somebody. That's a virtuous action, an action to benefit another. In other words, driven by a thought in the mind. Because the actions themselves have no essence, really. They're driven by what's in the mind. So to make our actions virtuous, they need to be driven by a positive thought. So therefore, that's why starting point in Buddhism, Buddha has a little list of what he suggests would be to, non-virtuous actions. Sounds just like Jesus, he has a little list. And he suggests you don't kill, you don't steal, you don't lie. He suggests like that. Same as Jesus, same as any decent communist, decent any person, good solid ethics. You try not to harm others. That would be deciding on what is a virtuous action, driven by a virtuous state of mind. The key is the mind. From that perspective, you know, you could then say, you know, let's say you see an ant and the ant is suffering. Its little leg is broken or something. And you panic, you know, which is what we do. And you think, oh, I must kill it. Poor little ant is suffering. I must stop it suffering. So you can really see you're driven by the wish not to, you're driven by the thought to help the ant, aren't you? And you kill it. You did. So technically you could say killing is wrong because it harms others. But you could argue your motivation, you know, was quite pure, even though it didn't have much wisdom. From a Buddhist perspective, it doesn't have much wisdom. Of course, from the Buddhist perspective, that little ant's mind will continue to another life, and you don't have any certainty whether it'll get another life, you know. So there's another whole discussion there. But even an action that would be called negative, you know, lying, for example, your mother can't stand the thought of Buddhism. She'll have a heart attack if she discovers you're a Buddhist. So it's comfortable. No, Mum, of course I'm not a Buddhist. That's okay. You don't want to give your mother a heart attack, you know. You can argue like that, but it's still got to have a lot of clarity. So virtuous action is one driven by a thought to not harm another or a thought to benefit another. Bottom line, that's it. There's nothing else beyond that. That's it. It's either harming someone or benefiting someone. It's not complicated. So finding out then whether, but then it gets tricky, isn't it? Because, you know, there's the Israelis think they've got the right to do what they do, and the Palestinians think they've got the right to do what they do, and the Ukrainians think they, and so on and so forth. It's quite difficult. Even it could end up having the same set of ethics, you know, but look at them killing each other. We've got to start in ourselves, though. So then the basic way, the basis for your actions in a day, and the Buddha would suggest the very first level of practice, is to harness the energy of your body and speech. So, you know, you walk into the kitchen and your first wish is, because you're trying to work on your mind, is not say a harmful word to your husband. That's a perfectly good motivation, very kind. But the added component in Buddhism is very fascinating. And I think in the West, we don't really get this. We don't give it the power it deserves. The Buddha's key point is, the very first level of practice is not to be kind to others yet. It's to be kind to yourself first. And what's that mean? Well, because of his view of karma, because of the view that your mind is a continuity of mental consciousness that goes back and back and back and existed before conception in your mother's womb and before that, and that every millisecond of what you think and do and say is the very process that has and is producing you moment by moment. Everything you think and do and say is sowing seeds in your mind, dropping habits into your mind, putting imprints into your mind, putting seeds in your mind that will ripen in the future as fruits. So his very first level of instructions, if people want to follow, he would say, don't kill, don't steal, and don't lie. So don't harm others. Now that just sounds like Jesus, but the difference is huge. Because Jesus, so you ask Jesus, why should I not kill? You should ask him a good reason. You should have a decent reason. Don't just say yes. Ask him, what's your reason? And he will tell you very clear. It's because God said. That's the definition of a sin in Christianity. Going against God's will. And that's reasonable if God's the boss. That, as we know, the Christians talk about it like that. And that's our usual view of morality. Someone said, don't do it. So we get guilty and neurotic and try to hide. We all have that very deeply, this dualistic view. Mightn't be God, might be mummy or the police, you know. Don't do that. So we don't want to get caught. That's our view of morality. Well, it's kind of infantile for the Buddha. His reason, you ask Buddha, why would you suggest I don't kill, please, Buddha? And he will tell you, guess what, Robina? That's going to harm you. And what he means by that is, because it's an action that harms another, driven by anger, that'll pollute your mind. It'll develop the habit in your mind of more anger, and then will ripen in the future as unbearable suffering, not to mention give you suffering right now. Because everything you think and do and say programs you and then produces results in the future. We are our own creators, basically. As the Dalai Lama says, karma is like self-creation. That's the basis of this first level of practice. Not because he says. Thinking that you don't kill because Buddha says is a bit like for the Buddha thinking that when you go to your doctor, she says, don't smoke. And you'll say, why not? She does not say, because I say so. We know we'd laugh at her if she did. That's what we think of morality. Someone's telling us not to do it because we're naughty. That's why we have guilt and neurosis. It's nonsense. It's as natural law. For the Buddha, it is natural law. So yes, he defines killing as wrong because it harms another. But why he would exhort us not to kill in the first stages of practice is because it'll harm you. This is very surprising to us. That's the meaning of karma. You produce yourself. Just like sugar will harm you. It's not a moralistic issue. Don't eat sugar because your doctor will get upset. It's because it's going to harm you. We get that when it comes to the body, not when it comes to the mind, because we don't think we produce ourselves at all. We've got this dualistic view of guilt and shame, and someone's going to catch me, you know. So we really got to think about this one. This is the meaning of karma. This is why the very first level of practice. Don't kill, don't steal, don't lie, don't jump on the wrong partner for your own sake. Because what you do, think, and say produces you. So you are the beneficiary then of living according to vows and of harnessing your energy. As Lama Zopa says, the rats and roaches will have a party. They're in peace because you leave them in peace. But the real reason behind those instructions in the first level of practice, controlling your body and speech, not controlling your mind yet, not following through on actions that are driven by delusions and harming others, you are the beneficiary of that. That's first level of practice. Then you've got the miracle of space to go deeper into your practice and now start to change the mind. Is what runs our behavior, you know. Start to see the mind itself, distinguish between these thousands of thoughts and work out, you know, the negative ones, the positive. So the third category, I like to call them the mechanics of our mind. They're like intelligent, concentration, good memory. These are like mechanics. They're not moral. They're not virtuous or non-virtuous. A good memory is not virtuous or non-virtuous. It's a necessary quality to do virtuous things well and to refrain from doing non-virtuous things well, not to mention, you know, adding up your numbers and driving a car. They're not virtues and non-virtues, but they're a very real category. But the key ones are the delusions and the virtues. We've got to sort out that lot. And it's very difficult because a big fat jumbled soup, isn't it? You know? But the distinction between them is the negative neurotic ones harm you. They're the voices of ego. They're constricted. They make you miserable. And they are liars. They are misconceptions. They misrepresent reality back to you. And virtuous states of mind are valid. And there's some kind of logic in this. All of these are the voices of the root delusion called ego grasping, known colloquially, ego grasping, maripa, ignorance, this root delusion, the primordially deep misconception that posits a concrete, solid, separate me. And all the others are the voices of that misconception. But in their character, they are all misconceptions. But because we've practiced them for countless lifetimes, they're so habitual that we don't notice the misconception component. We just notice the emotional component. And as I said, we even feel it in our body, you know. So there's a bunch of things I've been saying. Maybe some questions. Ask me some questions. Oh, no, I've got one. Sorry, I've got one. I'm okay. Let's blow my nose for a second. Any questions? Anybody? Any thoughts to say? Something to bring up? Discussion?
I have a question.
Go, Eileen, darling.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Robina. It's good to see you. You were talking.
Everybody, you can turn it off. No, I'm happy, but if you want to turn it off, okay, good. You all warm and toasty? What about you? Fainting? Okay. You're okay? Good. Go, Eileen.
You were also discussing this at Tibet House last night about conventional and ultimate reality.
That's right. Yeah.
Emptiness is form, form is emptiness.
Okay, fine.
So here's my question, and it's just something I've been thinking about. Is Buddha nature the same as emptiness?
No, darling. Okay, no, okay, there's a relationship. Let me say it more precisely for you. Okay, there is a relationship. That's the use of the words, Eileen. They say, okay. So they say, yeah, there's a relationship. Yes, yes. So they say we all possess Buddha nature. And it's all it means is all minds naturally possess the potential to be completely free of delusions and fully developed in wisdom, which means a Buddha. So everybody simply saying everyone possesses that. So you could argue, I use a simple example because we don't talk this way in our culture. I would say we would all agree that an acorn, possesses oak tree nature. Can you hear the meaning? It's very simple. All rose seeds by definition possess rose tree nature. It's a weird way to put it, but the meaning is evident. It's just a quaint way of saying that all seeds, if you define it as a rose seed, then by definition, it possesses the potential to be a rose. So all minds, Buddha would say, all minds, Buddha has found from his own direct experience, have the potential to be fully developed in perfection, fully developed in virtue and completely free of all delusions. And that's the meaning of the word Buddha, a fully enlightened being. So the qualities of an enlightened being sound very much like Christians would talk about God, like infinitely wise, infinitely compassionate, infinitely powerful. But the Buddha would say every mind has that potential. So that's what it means by Buddha nature. So you would argue that what that Buddha nature, you could say, all minds are, why we possess that potential is because our mind is empty of existing from its own side. Our mind has no intrinsic nature. That's the relationship. You would say like that. You understand?
Yes, I think so.
Well, where'd your question
Well,
come
in other words, if the mind, they use words like luminous, right?
What, dear? What?
In terms of the Buddha nature, luminous mind.
No, luminous has got nothing to do with Buddha nature. No. Buddha nature, you could argue Buddha nature is referring to the emptiness of the mind. Luminous, okay. These words is the trouble. Got to be very precise with our use of the words. Okay. The definition of mind, it's got two parts. First part tells you its conventional characteristics. So the usual one they use is the word clear or clarity, not meaning in clear thinking, but not physical. And another term that's often used is luminous. Okay, consciousness is not, it's clear or luminous. And the second part of the definition is it is that which cognizes. Its job is to cognize. But Buddha nature is like it's just referring to the fact that we've got the potential to become a Buddha. And it's because the mind is empty of inherent existence. Because the mind is empty of inherent existence, because the mind is not set in stone, it can therefore change and become perfected. Eileen?
Yeah, so everything that goes on in our mind, all of our conceptual thoughts and all of these things that you've been talking about, that's what is in the way of understanding that the mind is, as you say, empty of intrinsic nature. Is that?
In general, yes, in general, conceptuality is the hindrance to an experience of your own empty nature, because you need to go beyond that in concentration. But the main problem is the deluded states of mind, the misconceptions. They are what are blocking us from experiencing our true nature. And the sensory, of course, as well. They're the grosser levels. So then by learning to harness the mind, get concentration, go to subtler levels, learn to identify the delusions every day and lessen them, and identify the virtues and grow them, and eventually through concentration getting more and more subtle, and eventually studying and understanding all the teachings and dependent arising, and eventually you'll cut all the delusions completely from the mind in your meditation on emptiness, and one day you'll see for the first time in your concentrated meditation that there never has been, isn't, and never could be the kind of I that we believe is there. Putting it simply like that.
Thank you.
Does that?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
What else? Yes.
So emptiness, therefore, is not really empty, but it's a completely other state of like absolute bliss or intelligence. Or can you describe?
Okay. So no. Okay, I understand here. So okay, so the mind, in a conventional sense, the mind, our mind, when it's more subtle, when it's less deluded, when we're more sophisticated in our practice, and less deluded is the key point. We've got less attachment, less anger, less grasping, less jealousy, less anxiety, more clarity, more goodness, more virtue, then you will be naturally, just conventionally speaking, very happy, blissful person. Because mind in its nature, not physical, when it is in its even a temporary state of, even let's say you've got concentration, this technique these Hindus invented 3,000 years ago, and even temporarily in your more subtle level of concentration. Lama Yeshe says, you can't even imagine the level of bliss, ecstasy, he would say, that your mind naturally experiences, because that's its natural state. So then we come back into our daily life and our berserk thoughts and the crummy, that's what causes the chaos and the drama, and forget about bliss, you know. But our mind has that potential. That's conventionally. And then when we realize emptiness, even more subtle, removed even the subtlest imprints of the delusions from the mind, then you are only virtuous and blissful. You can't not be. But you're still in your body and you have life and you've got children and husbands and babies and things but you've got a very different way of seeing the world. Are we communicating?
Yeah. And so what's the technique?
It's all there. It's all there laid out.
In Tantra.
Huh?
In Tantra?
No, I didn't discuss, not even going anywhere near Tantra yet. We're discussing all the very first stages of practice. We're talking the very first step is control your body and speech, live in vows, do lots of practice and purification, then get some concentration, and then start to get, and then learn to work on your mind. And then, this is lots of work to do, years and years of work, one step at a time. Long-term, one step at a time, and long-term patience. But all the techniques are there. It's up to each one of us to find them. They're all there in the literature. Are you understanding me?
Yeah, I understand. I'm from New York, so I'm just kind of looking for,
It's sort of like we're discussing E equals MC squared here. Oh yeah, where will I find that? Well, you've got to start with 1 + 1 is 2. Then find good teachers, and then settle into your practice, and then one step at a time.
Well, because I always see classes.
A bit closer.
I always see classes on the theories and sutra, but not on the actual technique where you're being taught like the techniques.
No, I mean, what I'm talking about here is technique. I mean, okay, it's a bit like, you're learning, you're hearing mathematics here, and you're saying, well, I'm not hearing the technique. Well, the technique is to use a computer or a pen. Here, the technique is getting concentration. That's all there. It's all there. But just concentrate on its own is not enough. You can't just learn to use a computer and a pen. You've got to have the content called mathematics. Well, here you're listening to the content of Buddha's teachings, which is the stuff that you'll be working with your techniques. And it's a day-to-day. You're not in concentration every day. You're dealing with the dishes and mean people every day. So you're working on your mind every day, learning to be your own therapist every day, and hearing the delusions and going against them, developing the virtues. It's a full-on job every day. Do you understand me?
Yeah.
So it's up to us to find the right places and the right teachers and the right books and then develop a practice.
Sounds like a lot of letting go.
What, darling?
Sounds like a lot of letting go.
Yeah, letting go. I mean, of course, if you have to go and you want to be a tennis player, you've got to let go a lot of things. You want to be a mathematician, everything you choose to do means you've got to sacrifice other things. But part of the practice is exactly that. Yeah, learn to see your mind, not believe in your own views, pretty cup, ugly person, Mr. Trump, this, he, that. Learn to distinguish facts from fiction and not throw the baby out for bathwater, and lessen the neuroses and grow the virtues for your own sake and then for the sake of others. It's a gradual process, you know, but doable. It should give us confidence.
Thank you.
Yeah. Someone else. On Zoom here, for example.
Hi, Venerable.
Yeah.
On Zoom, I'm Chloe.
Who is it? Chloe, talk to me, sweetheart.
Hi. Yeah, so I actually came across this term called all-accomplishing wisdom lately, and I really want to learn more about it because my understanding is like it's basically how you can transform your 5 attachment or like aversion into like all-accomplishing wisdom, essentially.
Oh, darling, it's just one of those words that are used to refer to different. I mean, there's a set of these. Where'd you get it? What did you read? What do you say? What do you say?
I was actually doing a class with one of like a former monk from Thich Nhat Hanh's sort of temple in Vietnam.
Good,
and
yeah.
we were just discussing about the term of like all-accomplishing wisdom. It's just like something that he's been talking and we're just discussing about it.
I think he's probably just discussing more advanced levels. Yeah, advanced levels of the capacity for the mind to be cognizing reality. Yeah, that's right. So
yes.
Then question.
The question is just, I'm just curious, like, how do you do the transformation of all these like 5 aversion or attachment into the 5, like one of the 5?
How do you do what, darling? How do you do what?
How do you transform the attachment or aversion or delusions that you have into like one of these 5 wisdoms?
Darling, that's really, I mean, that's a super sophisticated stuff. I'm not even going to, there's no point in answering it. It's sort of like you've just read a little bit of thing on grade 7 algebra and it fascinates you and you've grabbed hold of it. And you've got to get back to 1 + 1 and go the basics and go according to the rules and go according to the steps, one step at a time, and allow the path to unfold for you one step at a time. Just learn to see your attachment first. Forget about transforming. God Almighty. Sweetheart. I mean, it sounds, I mean, good, keep reading, it's exciting, and I'm very happy. But meanwhile, have a practice, do a bit of concentration, look at your mind, identify attachment, identify anger, identify jealousy, and practice a few virtuous thoughts. That's practice, and that'll lead you to all this.
Right.
Into grade 7 in algebra. Do you understand my point?
Yeah, I understand. Thank you.
Think so. Okay. I'm sorry, maybe I just rave on too much. I don't know, and get people confused. I'm sorry. Yes.
I was just curious thinking about my own attachment to like negativity sometimes.
Be closer to the mic.
Yeah.
Attachment to negativities, like
I
you like beating up dogs or something.
What's going on in the world right now, living in America, I find it's very hard to not be attached to the negativity with the news. So I have to.
You mean been addicted to watching it, sort of like
in a way, and then also feel compassion for people that are suffering. And then, but I was kind of listening to what you were saying. If the Buddhist was here with us today, how would he help us understand the external reality that we're all trying to make sense of sometimes? Does that make sense? How would he help us navigate the external reality?
Okay, one of the biggest things I think is, are you asking the question, why is whatever you think happening, or how do I interpret it?
How do I interpret it?
So you're talking about the politics in this country at the moment. Are you talking about, is that what you're discussing?
Correct. It's like how do we make sense of what's actually fact or fiction through the lens of external reality?
Well, I mean, okay, so you're saying you read a news story about some people in Minneapolis being arrested and something like that. Is that an example?
That could be an example.
I mean, there's 1,000 events every day. So take one event. Let's just sort out how we interpret one event.
Okay. So
give me a simple example of one event.
So one event could be we're receiving information that the person that was involved in that gentleman that passed away, that was very sad, that he was at fault, and then we're being told 2 stories.
Oh, I see. So you mean, where do we find the facts?
I understand about finding the facts, but interpreting it through the lens of some people believe one side and then other people.
So you mean, why do people have different viewpoints? Are you asking why?
In a way, yeah.
Not in a way. You have to.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
You're asking why do people?
Yeah.
So you mean you're asking why one person says that's ugly and one person says it's nice?
Yes.
You're asking that.
Yes.
Something simple.
Mm-hmm.
We've got different tendencies, different personalities, different tastes. Have we not? Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. So, so interpreting. So I would suggest if it's interpreting that to do with a man who was shot, well, he was shot, right? The interpretations would be people who agree with the man who shot the man, who've got politics, who've got viewpoints that agree with the ice guy, isn't it? So they think it's a good thing. And then the people who more have, don't agree with the ice guy and agree with the guy who got shot. That's why. I mean, that's why some people prefer Palestine, some people prefer Israel. We've got viewpoints. Have we not? Everyone's got different personality, different viewpoints. And so we call it political. So then finding the facts is another discussion, is then I suppose that the police, whoever has to do the research, finds out who did what, and the ice guy is either right or wrong. But still won't change people's opinions. The people will still be agreeing with the ice guy and the others who agree with the guy who got killed. So, at a simple level, it's just different personalities. So, okay, Buddha's description of why is due, in the Western view, it's because you got this from your mother and that from your father. The Buddhist view is you brought your own consciousness with you. So you come into this life with a lot of anger, let's say. And so then, you end up having a label that's called racist or a label that's called something else. We label those things. We have a strong aversion for a certain group of people. That's due to past habits of yours. You prefer music, you prefer football. You've got different tendencies in the mind. But interpreting what's right and what's wrong, if we look at it from the most basic point of view of harming others, the only way to find out would be if that ice guy knew his mind well, he might, we have to find out whether he did it, whether he created a negative action or not. So then the only way we're going to know that from the ice guy's point of view is if he's looking into his mind and he confesses, yes, I was really angry and I thought I didn't like what that guy was doing. I decided to shoot him. So we could then deduce the ice guy created negative karma. But on the other hand, the ice guy might have really felt a kindness in his mind. Maybe he saw something else. So you can never know externally whether something's good or bad, because you've got to first look into the person who did the action. Do you understand what I'm saying? So there's different ways. So the law might say don't kill, and then it might be decided the ice guy's wrong, even if his motivation was good. But from the ice guy's side, he mightn't have created much negative karma, but from the world side, he has to go to prison. So there's so many ways of saying what is reality. And do you get my point here?
Yeah, no, I understand. But
the bigger question, it seems to me, is everybody's always wondering why it's happening. Why? And we're not, someone yesterday said this, how do we deal with all this stuff coming? And it's not so much, you can have the why, but it's more, how do I learn to deal with it? So how are you dealing with it? What are you deciding when you read about it? I think part of the problem is we think we have to have an opinion. My feeling is we don't have to have an opinion. It doesn't mean you become indifferent. But, like I said last night, it seems to me this type of behavior is since humans have been around, and animals, there's always going to be violence, there's always going to be anger, there's always going to be harming, there is stealing and lying and killing. Until we change, it's always going to keep happening. So when we know that, we're not going to be surprised by it, because often we're surprised by it. When we say, oh my God, why is this happening? We're showing shock. But why would we be shocked? We don't need to be shocked. So how do you deal with it? If there's something you can do to help it, do it. If not, shut up and learn about your own mind. My feeling is a bird needs two wings, wisdom and compassion. So my approach to the world, having the Buddhist view, I read. I've got like 10 newspapers. I'm a junkie. I read everybody's all the various stories. I read The Economist and the Wall Street Journal. I've got their views. I've got the Guardian's views. I've got the New York Times views. I like all the different viewpoints, and I read and see what's going on and have my own way of interpreting. And then there's two things. There's the wisdom wing and the compassion wing. The wisdom wing is the work you do for yourself. How do I learn to deal with this? So then I might read about Mr. Trump. I might read about Minneapolis. I'll read about Palestine. I'll read about whatever it is, the suffering and violence of the crazy world, without having anger for the people. That I do not have. But I and I have the view of karma, and I see the suffering that this is unbelievable karma these people created, and then then the first one is I go, well, there's anger, there's violence, there's lying, there's stealing, and I'm reading it, and it's like a workshop. I'm like an oncologist looking at someone's disgusting cancer. I don't have a panic attack. I go, wow, isn't that interesting? And then I go, well, thank you for showing me my mind, and I'm going to determine not to be like that. Then I get use from it. I don't lose the plot. And then next step is have compassion. And if I can go further and do something to stop it, I will try and do that. But most of the time you can't. Then you keep your own sanity. Do you understand me?
Yeah. No,
but it's much of the time because we're addicted to it, like you said, attached to it, because it's like, oh my God, look at those disgusting, because we want to have an opinion. We're angry as hell. How dare he, how dare she do this screaming and yelling and shouting? It's called anger. It doesn't do any good to anybody. Do you understand me?
Yeah. Thank you.
And then of course, if we don't, if we have the luxury, and we don't like it, then we don't read about it. It's only now because every tiny thing is naked to everybody on the planet because of our devices these days, But once upon a time, you live in a little village in a little country. During the Second World War, you could be a little quiet little village in Tasmania where they had no radio. You wouldn't know there's a Second World War somewhere else. But we know everything now, so we're just kind of been drowning in it, aren't we? And much of it, I think, is the surprise. We're shocked by it. I know, I'm just talking here. Do you understand me?
Yeah, absolutely.
What else can we do? Meanwhile, then keep working on your mind and stay sane in it and then be useful to some degree. What else can we do? Do you understand? I don't know. What do you think, people?
Venerable Robina, I think Vincent had his hand up. Vincent, did you want to go ahead and unmute?
Okay, Vincent, talk to me.
Hi,
Vincent.
Venerable.
Yes.
I'm very attached to video games that involve harming others. I'm just wondering, I'm very attached to video games and the gameplay involves harming others.
I understand. So you always only do those kinds of video games, do you, Vincent? You don't do other kinds. So then what's the question, dear? What's the question?
I'm just wondering how bad the imprints will be, because I've been playing these games all my life.
I understand that. I don't think you need me to tell you that. Obviously, we all know we're very habitual people, aren't we? And I think we do something more than once. We've already developed the habit. So I think you've answered your own question, Vincent.
Okay. Thank you, Venerable.
What do you think? What do you think, though, darling? Why would you need to ask me? I think it's evident, isn't it? What do you think?
I honestly, I don't know. I think I'm just in denial, really.
What, darling?
I think I'm just in denial about it, really, because I'm so attached.
I understand that would be right. Yeah, exactly. We're like that, isn't it? You can't say no to it. No, I understand that. So how many hours a day? 7, 8, 10 hours a day you play?
Yeah, like most of the day. Yeah, like 7 hours, I'd say.
I understand. It must be quite tiring.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, at least you're not out there harming other people. That's one good thing, Vincent.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you get happy when the people suffer in the game?
I wouldn't say like consciously. It's like it's sort of like relieving in a way.
It's sort of like what, darling? It's like what?
It's sort of like relieving in a way because
I see. Okay.
I don't know.
Why don't you think? I mean, one way, seeing as you're attached to it, why don't you just think you're fighting your delusions every time you? How about thinking that way? That might help a little bit.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
Fighting your delusions, and yes, you're fighting your anger, and you're fighting your addictions, and you're fighting your laziness, and you're fighting your attachment. How about thinking like that?
Yeah. So I will do. Thank you, Venerable.
Try, darling. Okay, Vincent.
Thank you.
All right. What else, people? Yeah, we all have opinions. This is the point. We all have opinions, which doesn't mean you sit there like an idiot and have no opinion. So it's a question of, because I've got the view of karma, I've got the Buddhist view. That's my view that's the way I analyze the world, and I try to apply it really sincerely every day. And because I'm doing my best to work on my own mind, then the main teaching for me, the first one has to be, oh my God, look at that anger, look at that violence. And then you go, instead of this, like this righteousness we all have, as if everybody else is evil and we're a saint. How dare she do that? As if you got to see it like, you got to see it as a mirror showing you that you've got those delusions. If I say I can see anger, I can see my jealousy, I can see my resentment, I can see my lying. Thank you for showing me how not to be. I'm really serious when I say that. And then I make it a teaching for me. And, stop being angry with them. There's no benefit in that. And then I have compassion. My God, look at the suffering they're causing each other and themselves. There's no other thing I can do. Do you see my point? Like, I keep myself sane then, instead of the shock horror. Why is this happening? Oh my God, which is just anger, panic. Do you understand? That's my view. Yes.
But if you can see everything that way,
yeah,
then isn't everything therefore really happening good?
Everything what, darling?
If you can really see everything.
Speak into the mic like it's an ice cream. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it was off, sorry. If you could really see everything that way,
yeah,
right, then it's really happening for your growth.
For my sake, personally, yeah, right. Which doesn't mean it's right that people are killing.
Right, but
then we can all learn tremendously from life. That's the point.
Right, so then it's not particularly bad.
Of course it's bad. You can't say it's not
bad. If you're seeing
no, darling, that's completely nonsense. That's complete nonsense. I know your point. But just because I can learn from it doesn't mean, that I want you to go and, well, kill that guy again so I can learn again. Come on. It doesn't, there's still someone out there killing each other.
But potentially there could be something good that we can learn from anything bad that happens to us. Then.
Yeah, but of course, but that's my business and that's my job. That's me. That's me. I'm watching tennis and I can learn how to play tennis. That doesn't mean they're not playing good tennis or bad tennis. It's a different discussion altogether. It's me learning by watching the world. That's how we can learn from the world and make it a teaching for me. Good and bad. When I see good things, wow, look at generosity, look at kindness, look at compassion. Amazing. Thank you for showing me how it can be. Both ways. It's rich grist for my mill for the development of my mind.
Well, what if something really, really bad happens?
What about it? What if something?
Process. You can't. Like something terrible.
Like what? Give an example.
Okay, God forbid somebody's child gets abducted and that parent.
I'm talking, sweetheart, listen, I'm talking about me here, just me in my little daily life, dealing with what I can. I don't have babies, so I can't answer that one. And a person who is really wise and skillful would be able to manage that. Well, of course, that's the point. We suffer not because of compassion and love and kindness. We suffer because of attachment and anger and fear and anxiety, which are all voices of ego. That's why we suffer. We don't even suffer if we see other people suffering. We suffer because we've got anger. So a mother who's an advanced practitioner, her little heart would be breaking, but she wouldn't lose the plot. That's the thing that we find shocking in the West. We don't think that's possible. You understand me? Because when you've lessened attachment and anger and jealousy and neurosis, you suffer less and you have more wisdom and clarity and more compassion. That's the whole point. So one step at a time.
Robina, this is Margie.
Yeah, Margie, darling, talk to me.
I just want to tell you how much I appreciate your using a very concrete example of, like, say, how to deal with the news. You know, say the two people that were murdered in Minneapolis and how to hold it in somewhat of a somewhat of a more enlightened perspective, because I notice I get so organized by my anger.
That's right, exactly, Margie. That's exactly the point, Margie. We get overwhelmed by it. And then, of course, the trouble is we get angry and then we kind of think it's noble anger, and it might be, but but we've got to distinguish. This is the big thing. We've got to distinguish between seeing there is something wrong, seeing the terrible suffering, but not having anger. But we think in the West that if you stop having angry, you give up and don't care.
Yeah.
No. I mean, I remember always quoting Martin Luther King. He'd say, it's good to see problems, it's good to see injustice, but then you say, what can I do to help? Rather than the panic and the shouting, because anger is just shouting and yelling. Anger is just a panic attack. And we think it's so noble. You know, that's why people scream at each other. It's just not noble, it's just demented. But having clarity, seeing the suffering, and if we have the courage to get in and do something to help it, wow, that's why you've got to admire people like Martin Luther King. Look at what he did. He was amazing in the face of the most appalling suffering. He never gave up, you know. So we can do that in our own life in a simple way. Keep our own sanity and do what we can to help. And if there's nothing we can do, then we do what we can. All we can do is that, you know.
So we can get so attached with
That's right.
the apparent barrage of the news, we can get attached to our noble anger.
Exactly right. And we
Ooh, that's not good.
And it's just waste our energy, completely wasting, you know.
Yeah.
That's why, I mean, if we look at the Dalai Lama, and we'd love to look at the Dalai Lama, but he is such a classic example of this, but he's so ordinary. He just seems so ordinary. We don't notice how high he must be, you know, because he's able to just, I mean, 70 years of never stopping, 80 now, 80 years he has never stopped.
Yeah.
Dealing with the insanity of the world, and he's still a happy guy. So there's something there to learn, you know.
I noticed that I almost feel like to hold a positive mood when things are like this, that's selfish.
I know that's a really good point, Margie. I know one of my sisters, when she came to visit me in India, when she saw the poverty, and then we went to have lunch, and it wasn't in such a luxurious place. And she was so shocked that we could be sitting there having lunch while the poor people. But I said, Mary, it's just the same in where you're living, in one of my sisters, wherever you're living, there's going to be a relative similar thing. There's going to be poor people on the street and you in your nice house. You can't, I mean, it's like, and almost as if we think we've got to be suffering as well. But when you're suffering as well, you can't do anything for anybody. That's why these Tibetans are so fun. They're so hilarious. Dalai Lama, everybody can see that he's a funny, happy, funny guy, but it doesn't contradict wisdom and compassion. This is the thing. But in our world, we kind of bear burdens. We feel we have to walk around with guilt and shame all the time, you know. It's just so neurotic. It's not true. Do what we can to help others.
This is so very helpful.
Good, darling. It's important. We have to distinguish. So the key point is to distinguish between thoughts and emotions that have a virtuous character and thoughts and emotions that are I-based and neurotic character. And if you have a positive state of mind, you can still see, oh my God, look at that suffering, look at that outrageous behavior, but you keep your mind steady. And then you can be cracking a joke the next minute. There's no contradiction.
That's so helpful. Thank you very much.
I know, darling. Yeah. Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Go.
I'm happy to be here.
Good.
First time.
Okay.
But I really appreciate that mind is not physical.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
And that you know, in my own kind of way of practicing, I try not to be attached to whether I like my oatmeal with blueberries or I don't.
Whether you what?
Whether I like my oatmeal with blueberries or not. I just do the action and I give the blueberry I give the compassion. I just think of compassion.
Okay, this is wonderful.
And
yes.
And what's kind of been different a little bit for me on the streets when I pass homeless or someone, I'm not trying to make myself look anyway, but I try to just do an action rather than have a thought of I feel sorry for you.
I see.
So, you know, I was like, for instance, bringing my laundry, and there was a guy with one sock on and one sock off. So I just stopped, went into my laundry bag
and gave him a sock. Good. So yeah,
walked on.
That's one. I understand.
I didn't stay attached to.
No, that's exactly right. That's how it could be. If we can do something, do it.
That's what I'm hearing. Like
that's right. And if you can't do something, have the compassion and have the thought. If I could, I would.
Don't carry a story.
No, that's right. That's right. We get so we're all drama queens, you know. We get so caught up in drama.
And it's a daily practice. It's a practice.
That's right. Exactly, darling. Of course, practice. It's exactly right. Exactly right. Once, that's exactly right. Do what we can, you know. Okay, people, what else? What's going on? 8:45, 8:45, 6:30, 7:30, 8 o'clock, 8 o'clock. Okay, any more questions? I think the key thing here, which is so not like in the Western psychology, when we can see it, the key thing is to find the way to distinguish between the I-based, fear-based, neurotic states of mind and the valid, kind of peaceful, spacious states of mind. Because delusions are very blocked, constricted, I-based and fear-based, and they make us blind. Virtuous thoughts make us open and spacious, and they're not fear-based and they're not neurotic. So we have to distinguish between. So you could equally have a person who's acting all kind, but it's just coming from attachment and it's neurotic. Or you can have a person who's strongly shouting, but it's coming from genuine compassion. We have to know the difference, you know, and we have to, but it's got to start inside. Then we'd have the courage to stand up and say something strong, even if people think we're angry, but it's not coming from anger. The virtuous thoughts and virtuous actions are very clean. They're very clean and they're very courageous and they're not I-based. It's only when we're fearful what people think. We're so, I mean, you know, we're so caught up with what people think of us. So, I mean, it's just a big soup in here. But to learn to, and that's why we've got to have a daily practice to begin to calm ourselves down a little bit, to begin to distinguish. But even knowing theoretically the difference between the delusions and the virtues. These words sound so simple, but it's profound to see the difference, you know. And then, yeah, anyway, yes.
Thank you, Carol.
Okay, go.
Where do you, like, what text is there to look at all these different states of mind?
Well, darling, I know this is the thing. It's like, this is coming from the text called Lorig, Mind and Awareness. And I studied it when I first became a nun. This is like whatever years ago, 40 years, 45 years ago. And so I studied the bare bones. It's like studying you study the facts. And then based on me trying to work with that in myself, then the words are coming out of my mouth, which is my way of experience, trying to experientially explain them. Do you understand? But it comes from your own inner experience. Do you understand?
Yeah.
I think it's the only way to say it.
So, but you recommend that text to actually like learn.
Well, I mean, so it's the same as playing the piano. You've got to learn the theory first.
Yeah.
You've got to learn Bach's theory, which is very dry. And then you've got to practice. And then 30 years later, you hear the music. And you can then articulate those theories so clearly because you now have the music. So with the mind, I mean, I'm not trying to say I know that much, but for me, mostly when I have to do my job, doing my job, and I ever told me to do this job, I base it on what I studied and then my own daily practice. Do you understand me? And then I try to speak from my experience what I've learned. But I cannot be saying a word I'm saying here if I hadn't studied those texts 45 years ago. No way on the planet. No way possible. Do you understand me?
Yeah.
Just one step at a time. I'm trying to give clues, you know? Yeah. Okay. All right. What do you think? Yeah. Any views, any opinions, any questions?
No, I'm just enjoying everything.
What?
I'm just enjoying all the
Oh,
details,
cool.
yeah.
Okay. The things when we get more virtuous, less neurotic, less I-based, we become courageous, more relaxed. You laugh more, you know. And it's very true. That's why the Dalai Lama, I mean, he tries to act like an ordinary person, like angry and things, but he can't fool us, you know. So he tries to act like ordinary. But you can see, he can't be up to 70 years of non-stop, 80 years. He's now 95. 95? No, he's not. He's 80. Yeah, he's 95.
90.
What is he? 91.
He just turned 90, I think.
91. No, that's right, because he's born in 35. That's right, yeah. But you can't, I mean, it's all those years of, you know, he's not disturbed, but he's passionate, he's clear, he's kind, he never gives up, but he's not disturbed. That's the key we're trying to get. So when we have, and that's what we have to understand, attachment. Attachment is this primordial emotional hunger that feels so empty and never have enough and never have enough and no, I'm not enough and I'm not doing enough. And the deepest attachment we have, forget sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It's attachment to being, is attachment to the view we have of ourselves and attachment to being seen in a certain way, you know. It's very strange, this one we have, very deep in us. So the more we give up attachment to everything, the more clear and content we become in ourselves, we become our own person. And then things don't freak us out, but we see them more clearly. We've got more courage and we see them more clearly, but they don't throw us, you know. That's what I think is true. So one step at a time, people. All the methods there. It's up to us just to study and to practice every day and find our good teachers and follow their examples and go one step at a time. That's it. Okay, people. Enough, I think. Jang Chub Sem Chog, Rinpoche Ma Ke Panam Ke Gyu Chi Ke Panyam Pa Me Pa Yang Gong Ne Gong Du Kaba Shog. Of course, all the other practices we don't even talk about, you know, but you do your mantras and you think about the Buddhas and you visualize the Buddhas, they all help as well, but I never talk about those. Maybe one day we'll talk about those. Okay. They give you nourishment. Thank you, darlings. Thank you, people. Thank you, Margie. Thank you, everybody.